Hello, and welcome to this special webinar where we will discuss the diversity that makes up the Bruin community and the resources available to help your student acclimate to UCLA, as well as the programming that exists for students beyond graduation. Today I have with me the Senior Director for Diversity Programs with the UCLA Alumni Association, Patricia Chow Wen, and the Director of the UCLA First Year Experience Program, Latanya Reese-Miles. My name is Jennifer Payne, and I'm a parent of a sophomore Bruin, as well as a leader on the UCLA Parents Council. Our guests today are experts in their fields and have much to contribute to the conversation around diversity on campus. LT and Patricia, welcome to the webinar.
Thanks, Jennifer. Good to see you.
You too.
Thanks for having us. I think actually some people might have just joined because I think we just went live. So for those that didn't catch, welcome to this webinar. And we'll be talking about fostering diverse and inclusive Bruin communities. LT, do you want to introduce yourself first?
Sure thing. So I'm LT, like Patricia said, and I'll start in a little bit in the past, which is I am a proud Bruin. So I graduated from UCLA with a doctorate in English. And during that time, I was able to teach part-time. I taught some courses related to diversity, particularly in the GE cluster for interracial dynamics, which is exclusive to first-year students. I also worked as an associate director for the Academic Advancement Program, also known as AAP. I've lived on the Hill as a faculty in residence, and so I've got to see students up close. And currently, though, I am 5 months into my position as Director of First Year Experience, which includes the Common Book Program, as well as a brand new initiatives for first-generation college students.
Hello, everyone. My name is Patricia Diao Nguyen. I serve as a Senior Director of Diversity Programs here at the UCLA Alumni Association. Prior to my position, I actually served in multiple roles across 3 different universities across the nation, focusing predominantly on LGBT students and students of color, particularly when it comes to their retention efforts. So I dealt a lot with thinking about things like suicide, mental health, sexual assault prevention, as well as racial bias. So have been a strong advocate for students and have been working with parents all my time and working in higher education. Here I work with 9 different diversity alumni associations that are based in race, ethnicity, sexual orientation, gender, and religion. And we're trying to figure out ways that we can engage our alumni to help UCLA become a more inclusive and diverse community for our students and for our campus overall.
Thank you so much, both, for joining us. I think you have such important information to share, and we already have questions coming in from parents and people that are watching our webinar. So what are some common challenges my freshmen might face coming from a very small hometown?
Maybe I'll go first as LT unmics herself. But I think for those that are coming from maybe smaller towns, you got a couple of things going on. You have the transition to a large city like Los Angeles, which is very vibrant and very diverse and very busy. Traffic alone will maybe tell you a little bit about that, but also there are a lot of different communities to be exposed to. Then you come to the school, which is a very, I would say it's a collection of a lot of different communities, which I know LT will talk a little bit about. But I will say from a personal standpoint, from a parent to a child, your student's going through a very transformative time during their college career. And I think what makes UCLA so vibrant and what we're very proud of is recruiting and having Bruins that are coming from diverse walks of life. We learn about ourselves in the face of sameness, but also in the face of difference. And the school offers that opportunity so much. So I think if students are coming in understanding that not only are they gaining an academic and professional career out of this, but they'll be learning a lot about themselves and their identity and what they believe in, and sometimes those can be really difficult conversations. And so sometimes the students come through some conflict of feeling that they're really out of place and they might feel like alone in their experience, but they'll also be able to find communities and classes and staff members and resources that will help them make sense of this as part of their growth.
Thanks, Patricia. I really appreciated how you talked about the mindset of the student. And some of those aren't particular to coming from a small town, right? It's just the newness of coming to college at all. But the reality is that we have a very big city. I mean, we have a very big campus, but the staff is very intentional about establishing smaller communities, particularly when if a student lives in the residence halls are divided by different courts or smaller communities. And there is both professional staff, but I will emphasize the key role that student staff play in helping to build and establish those communities on the floors, by building and by community. That kind of community could be built could happen in the dining halls, for example, or in public spaces. One other thing I will mention is True Bruin Welcome Week, and that is the week before classes where there's events that happen all over here in the residence halls, on main campus, where students can get involved and start to find their tribe, as they like to say, find their people. And those are not excluded to students who live on campus. So all of our students are invited to come and participate and get to know one another outside of the classroom. And of course, they will likely build communities within their classrooms as well.
Thank you so much. And I'll tell you, as a parent, our family came from a very small town, and the freshman year that we went through last year, I think exactly what you said, the residence halls were such a great way to build community, and my daughter experienced so much just from the closeness and the small knit community within the residence halls up on the hill. We were actually kind of sad when she left the hill. So that is definitely kind of one small community to another small community. So could you please share more about the makeup of UCLA? In what ways is UCLA diverse?
I'll start, and Patricia, please jump in here. What's been impressive to me about UCLA is that the concept of diversity is one that is fluid and one that shifts quite a bit. So I think typically when we're thinking diversity, people immediately start thinking about race and ethnicity. And it's true, we have students represented from multiple kinds of racial and ethnic backgrounds. There's also tremendous diversity within socioeconomic class, among religions, among sexual orientation. And so Patricia has mentioned this before, but you are going to encounter someone different than you. And so that's kind of at the core of perhaps what diversity may mean for some students. So there may be students who came from high schools where many of their peers looked a lot like them, but then there are going to be students who are coming from high schools where their peers did not look like them. And then there may be culture shock on either side.
This actually goes back to why perhaps some students may have chosen to go to UCLA. We are a public institution founded under the UC system, and the UC system is really big about creating higher education as a tool for social change, as well as thinking about California and the makeup of it. So the university systems really try really hard to have our student populations mimic and parallel the state population of California. So even when thinking about race and ethnicity, yes, we are becoming a campus that is becoming more racially diverse, but we are also on the cutting edge of thinking about certain pockets that not everyone is always thinking about. So if you think about, students that are coming from foster backgrounds, or those that are coming from a veteran experience, those that may be undocumented, UCLA is taking a lot of leadership in thinking about those populations here. And I think that's truly what we're trying to prepare our students for. The world is diverse, and so we must mimic that here on this campus. So that's the type of diversity that you'll see here. I think also too, not thinking about just diversity as a stagnant way, as LT put, but diversity is very fluid. And college is a time that a lot of students are coming out. They might be realizing their gender identity. They might be owning for the first time that they're coming from a very poor background. And those stir up a lot of conversations and feelings, and those that interact with them will also stir up emotions and feelings. And that's the beauty around the learning environment that a diverse community creates here at UCLA.
Definitely, that's great. I want to talk about common books. How are the common books chosen, and how are discussions carried out?
Sure. I should explain what they are first. So the Common Book Program, this is its 8th year, actually. It was started by a faculty member and one of our former resident directors. And it started as a programming opportunity just in one building, where the group selected, the community selected one text that everyone in the building decided to read. And then the idea behind it was to take a text and have conversations about it, but that text really should address actually some of the issues that Patricia was just talking about. Where do you see yourself in the world? How do you have challenging conversations? How do you address a difference, someone that has a different background than you? And so this year's book, I have it right here, it's Between the World and Me. And in terms of the selection process itself, it is both high level of student involvement as well as faculty involvement. So students so there's a campus-wide call for nominations. Folks can submit online, and then those books are narrowed down. Students actually are involved in not only the nomination process, but the narrowing down to the shorter list. And then faculty, there's a committee of faculty who live on the Hill, our faculty and residents who make the ultimate decision. That's how the process works right now. And the way that the schedule currently works is that during the summer, at every orientation, every new student, both freshman and transfer, receive a copy of this book, because that's how important we feel about this program. They receive a copy during orientation. We strongly encourage them to read before they get to campus. Not everyone is able to do that. And then currently in the timetable, students have an opportunity to read and discuss, perhaps in their residential community. We have a special conversation for our commuters, and then there are conversations throughout the year, or events throughout the year that happen, not necessarily just in the residence halls, but in different pockets of campus, like I say with the library, that address that theme in some way. So we do see it as a diversity tool for sure. Just one example of that.
And if you haven't read it, I highly recommend it. It's actually great for this group because it's actually a long letter from a parent, an African-American man, to his son. So there are a lot of strong themes around family and being a parent, particularly right now with everything that's going on in the world around issues of equity, particularly around race. So highly recommend it. It's a great read and a great way to share something special with your student. I'd probably read it with a box of tissues, but it's a great book.
Just a heads up about next year's book. We are, again, it's the beginning of this year. We're already talking about 2017, but we have a strong feeling that we want to have a text that addresses mental health in some way, because not just the prevalence of it, but just like it's come to the surface for many of our students. We feel like it's time to have explicit conversations about that.
I think that's a wonderful idea. As you said, so many students kind of come into themselves as they go away to college, and there are things that could be confusing for them, and topics like that are so wonderful to have in the forefront, so they don't have to, explore it alone. So that's really great. So our next question is, how will my student be challenged regarding diversity on campus?
Patricia, please start.
I think we all come with a certain frame of understanding what diversity means. Let's be honest, our students are growing in our homes, in our neighborhoods, in our schools for a certain way, maybe, for a substantial part of their life. And then they're about to be put into a brand new community, where things may be familiar, some things will not be familiar. They may have expectations of how their identities might interact. Like, so for example, I've talked to students, and even myself, when I came from a predominantly Asian and Latino community, and I wanted to really, explore some different things, when I went to college. And sometimes those things were not what I expected. And I ended up actually hanging out a lot more in an African American community at college than I thought I would be, maybe with some others. So, I think some of the challenges are that everyone is on this journey of understanding who they are. And sometimes we may not be open to those that are similar to us. They may be different to us. And those interactions can create points of conflict that can make you feel like you want to stereotype a whole entire community after that. And so some of the challenges can be of trying to find compassion in the experiences that you have in meeting others. Maybe you just met someone on a bad day. Doesn't mean that whole entire community or people from that community are going to be that way. And for you to also think about, your own personal identities and what has afforded you, some opportunities, where you didn't get opportunities compared to other people. You get some of this comparison thing that can be really hard to deal with. But I will say UCLA has great resources like intergroup dialogue, LT's office, so many different courses where you can actually explore this through an academic lens to better understand. You'll also see things on campus like protests, right? You'll see students campaigning for certain things, particularly with Black Lives Matter going on, or certain movements that talk about investment and stuff like that. And those can be really politically charged. And if you're not really open to that, that can be really an intense thing to see. But what I encourage all students is, everyone's here to make sense of the world around them, and making sense together is why we're here. So to be open to it and to allow everyone to make mistakes, including yourself. So for example, one that I always hear is like, what words should I use or not use because I don't want to offend everyone? Look, the real education is actually making those mistakes and how to recover, right? So if you continually to use a word and you don't understand why you're using that word, that might be a chance to think about that again. But it's okay to make mistakes. That's why we're here. And we'll continue to do this forever. I've been a diversity practitioner for 10 years. I'm still making mistakes right around it. But I know I'm growing a lot, and I'm growing with the community alongside me.
That was a great answer. And I have two things to just add to that. First, about the personal identity, and you were hitting on this. For many college students, this will be the first time that they've ever thought about their own identity. Right? So they may have just thought of themselves, I'm just LaTanya, and then you're faced with another experience, and then you reflect back on yourself, actually, like, oh, well, who am I? What does this mean? I tell people all the time, I joke about this, like, I knew very well I was a Black student. I didn't know I was a first generation student until I went to college, and I felt very different. And so this wasn't really at that moment of my development really wasn't about other people and diversity. It was like, wow, what does this mean? And I'm now, and then this actually dovetails to my next point. I was learning terms in my classes that helped I never heard of before, but somehow now apply to me, like, oh, I was working class? I had no idea, But I think I felt like I wanted to touch on the role of academics when it comes to diversity, that we've talked a lot about those interpersonal interactions, but our students are going to be confronted with ideas and schools of thought that they've never encountered before. And our faculty are great resources. And so they may feel like, oh, this, I never heard this term and it makes me angry. That's a great opportunity to go to office hours, and a great opportunity to get to know the teaching assistant or the TA, or talk to their neighbor in the classroom, so that they're not in academic isolation.
It's so true, as they're learning about themselves, that they have that resource. Regarding resources, how can my student find members of their cultural community to connect with? Are there any themed communities in the dorms?
Why, yes, there are. We are proud to have a number of living learning communities right here in the residence halls, most of which students have requested. And that's a big component of a UCLA experience, or the student voice. But what does that mean? So let's take the African diaspora theme community as an example. So it is the floor not for students. This isn't about, I'm Black and I want to live on the floor. This is a community, a scholarly community for students who are interested in the scholarship of African Americans. And so they have a faculty, at least one faculty member that is affiliated with that community. The students do live on the same floor, and there are relevant academic and social activities for that community, and you know, team building and things like that. So so that would be theme communities. And of course there are a number of student groups, student initiated groups that pertain to one's any aspect of one's social identity. And I'm sure Patricia would love to talk about alumni support for our students, but those are just some. That's just the tip of the iceberg.
I think it dovetails nicely. A lot of the student groups that LT speaks about are what become sort of our pipelines into our alumni groups. So I mentioned that we have 9. I will say UCLA has a strong legacy of being the first in the nation to create spaces for our different communities. So 2 resources I'd like to really throw out there is a community programs office that has quite a few spaces for different groups, as well as the Bruin Resource Center. And I mentioned some of the identities before, like being undocumented or foster youth or being a vet. Those are 2 really great resources. Our diversity alumni associations, there are 9. Predominantly ethnic base, but we also have one of the first LGBT alumni associations in the nation, as well as Muslim and multiracial. And so they're always around, actually on campus. 75% of our alumni live within driving distance of our campus, so they're always back and guide. So I would say the student groups are a great resource, and they've done great things. You know, you can do some fun things like and invite, you know, family to come back and watch the different cultural shows that are in Royce Hall. There are just excellent student productions that talk about issues like mental health within certain communities, or what it means to be gay coming out in a Filipino community, to actually visiting some of our resources here on campus, so you can get to know the staff like LT that are amazing, that help our students through all this. The diversity groups are also in the community. So you might have seen some of them actually in an event that we do here in the Alumni Association called Send-Offs. We have a lot of our alumni networks in the region, as well as our diversity alumni networks, try to hold events in certain cities that take all the incoming Bruins and sort of send them off from their communities before they get here on campus. And a lot of our diversity alumni networks do that in order to let them know that not only do they have resources on campus, but they have Bruins worldwide for them to be there. Let it them being studying abroad somewhere, or they just want to come home for spring break and want to do an internship. There are diverse alumni that are willing to share their experiences, particularly through an identity lens, to help them.
And I love that. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say that I loved what you both said about a scholarly community transferring into the real world, the true community, because, you know, the goal obviously at UCLA is that our students are there, you know, for a small amount of time, not going to school their whole lives, and they need to take what they're learning in their scholarly communities out into the world to make the world a really good, beautiful place. So I love that you both mentioned that.
One of the things I thought of when Patricia was talking, and I feel like I'd be remiss if I didn't mention our new Welcome to Bruin Life event that happens. And so our school has evolved Convocation, which is like a big welcome event for our new students. It's one of our signature events during True Bruin Welcome Week. So traditionally, the convocation is one where it's very administrative focus, where the main speakers are the provost or the chancellor, et cetera. And so, of course, while we are pleased to have our chancellor give a major address to our students, Welcome to Bruin Life also, this is just our second year, has now evolved where students are the major presenters during this time. And so not just speeches, they're primarily dances, spoken word performances, skits, a cappella groups that are giving our new students, both all new students, so both our freshmen and our transfers, a preview into what life is like. So the nervousness about meeting roommates and or feeling like, oh, I didn't do enough this summer, I just was a bum, you know. So they kind of put that put that out there. And like I said, the whole idea is to start get them thinking already about what does it mean to enter this diverse community. So that's called Welcome to Bruin Life.
And it's great that you mentioned the Welcome to Bruin Life being directed toward transfer students as well. That actually was our next question that maybe you can expand upon a little bit. How are transfer students made to feel welcomed in the inclusive Bruin community?
First, everyone knows we love our transfers at UCLA, especially thanks to our wonderful coordinator, Heather Adams, who is an amazing fireball. She is the coordinator. And Patricia mentioned this earlier about the Bruin Resource Center, under which the transfer programs in general falls under. And so, again, like I mentioned, number one, our transfers receive a copy of the Common Book. They're part of our True Bruin Welcome. There's a transfer specific welcome. And then not necessarily just limited to transfers, but I do want to mention our non-traditional students as well. So those who have not come to us directly from high school, they may have more life experience, they may be working parents or our veterans, etc. Again, this adds to the diversity of our community. There are even transfer-specific courses. Often part of that has to do with community building and finding someone who understands that experience. You know, you haven't been to UCLA before, but you've been a college student before, so you want to find a peer. And we also have transfer-specific floors in the residence halls. Again, the idea is finding your people once again. And so the Transfer Center has taken the lead with that, but the Academic Advancement Program, also AAP, also has transfer-specific programming as well as other programs on campus too.
Great, thank you. And actually, LT, this next question is about the first year experience also.
Okay.
I understand the FYE squad includes 5 student ambassadors who help represent first year Bruins on campus. How is this program going, and do you plan to increase the number?
Wow. Okay, so let me explain the squad. This is brand new. I'm so excited to have a question about them. The role of the squad and role of the FYE office actually in general is to advocate on behalf of first year students. So we have a number of major events on campus, and sometimes those events can feel very overwhelming for students. So we created a position where, again, the peer-to-peer connection is really crucial. But so for an event, let's say like Major Blast, which just took place recently at Pauley Pavilion, it's where we have invited representatives from different academic departments in the event that students are interested in changing majors or adding a minor or just exploring. Well, it could be overwhelming if you're sort of milling around and not knowing who to ask. So our squad members are hired for their ability to connect with other students. And so they're out there creating maps, talking to students, pointing them in the right direction. And their role is to participate in different events. We have a squad member who is active on the Class of 2020 Facebook group. So again, it's like a buddy. So it's brand new. So we're super excited to have this 5. So we'll to be 5. There'll be 5. There's only 3 right now, and if we have a growing need for them, then I will talk to my boss about increasing my budget.
That sounds like a good idea. It's always peer-to-peer is always, it seems, so successful with, sometimes I know students might be timid about, coming to somebody they don't know. And if it's a peer, then they might be more willing to come and talk and ask questions and, let their true questions come out. Okay, the next question is about alumni diversity. Are there different alumni diversity groups? How can my student connect with them while still on campus?
I guess this one's for me. So we have 9 different ones, and I guess I'll just name them so you have a taste of what they are. We have an American Indian alumni of UCLA, an Asian Pacific American alumni of UCLA, Black alumni, Latino, Lambda, which is our LGBT group. We have a multiracial called Mixed. We have a Muslim group, as well as a Filipino one and a Pacific Islander one. And actually, we create these groups based on their student experiences because our alumni groups are actually very active from the day a student signs their letter. So we try to create experiences for our alumni to be part of the diverse student communities from very key milestones in students' lives. Let it be from the day they sign their letter and they come here for like that general open house, like Bruin weekend and all the different student initiated welcome weeks, and as well as the yield events. They're always around to do career panels and such, and they do a lot of one-on-one mentoring that I've come to see. We're also around at every single graduation, and you'll be surprised at how many times that our alumni do come around. If a student is ever looking for some sort of, they're struggling maybe in the lens of an identity, let it be maybe coming from a first-gen background, or is it coming from, being a parent as well and coming to school, or they came from a small town, I'm always happy to sit down with them and see if we can match them with an alumnus that can really connect them and sort of relate to their experiences. This is something I'm particularly passionate about because we know we graduate a lot of students that are coming from first-generation backgrounds, and they're coming from families that may not have any experience in going to college or navigating a university. So our alumni are very, very willing to serve as mentors, to serve in those capacities, because we also know for some communities, going to college isn't the thing that their parents want them to do. And so offering another sort of like maybe big brother, an auntie, right, or someone that went through this experience can really help them personally. There are a lot of mentoring opportunities on campus. What I really appreciate about an alumnus mentoring is really thinking about someone that's gone through it, an example that is successful, that's gone through it, and someone that can potentially share their identity in navigating what UCLA may feel like. So they can get involved also in the general programming that we do here at the Alumni Association. There's some great events that they'll recognize, like the SC Bonfire that happens, or Spring Sing, which is our giant talent show that has celebrity judges, but also to some professional career networking things. One I highly recommend is Interview with a Bruin. We bring a lot of alumni back to do mock interviews with our students and such. Also, all the events that we do with our diversity alumni groups are open to everybody. So if parents want to come through for a mixer with our groups, if students want to join in on a talk that they may be having on what it means to be LGBT navigating the workplace, those are always open to our families as well as our students. And you can always visit the alumni website to find out more when those things happen.
Hey, Patricia.
What's up, LT?
Word on the street is that Alumni Affairs is creating a first-gen affinity group.
Yes, yes. We have a lot of different ways that Bruins affiliate with each other. And so in addition to, Bruins that are alumni that were former vets, to being maybe Filipino, one of our newest ones is being first generation. And so those that didn't have parents that went to college and went through this experience have a very strong experience on campus that they want to share with others. So we're very excited about that as a new network that we'll have as a resource.
That's incredible. I actually, as a parent, heard so many things in that answer that I really liked. I didn't know that alumni experiences were open to everybody from the beginning. That's incredible. That's a great opportunity for students to find their family and find the people that they really love being around right away, and carrying that on into the future past UCLA. Well, there is no past UCLA. We're always UCLA, right? But the next question actually has to do with after graduation. Do your alumni associations ever hold class reunions?
Yeah, this campus is really interesting in that the class model isn't as strong as maybe the affiliations that students may have had developing their experiences here. So let's say your student was a resident assistant or an orientation leader, or they were part of the African Student Union. Those experiences tend to resound with our alumni much stronger than the class year that they graduate, because on average, there's a little bit of a wide variety on when people graduate. And so really we are trying to create alumni experiences for anyone that may have a strong experience on campus. We're trying to mimic that in the alumni world. So it could be by your career, it could be by where you live, it could be due to your student leadership experience or your identity. There's something for everyone. But the class reunion model is something that we've been exploring, but we've seen a lot stronger affinity with like their extracurricular involvement or their academic involvement.
Which is great because, they find the people that they're comfortable with, and then they, keep their experience going based on that and not just their graduation year. That's great.
Yeah. And it's really cool too, because sometimes people felt like they didn't have enough time to do it during their UCLA experience. So they'll do it during their alumni experience, because you may have 4 to 5 to 6 years as an undergrad, hopefully less. But you have a lifetime to be a Bruin. And so we try to offer those things that they may have missed as a student in their alumni world. So yes, we do things like professional networking sessions, but we also do some fun things like go to theaters together and go to food festivals together and learn about leadership opportunities and such. So it's a lifelong experience being a Bruin.
That's a very good point too. My daughter is class of 19, we hope. So, it may not be that she's the class of 19, but she has found, within that experience already in just her first year and a couple months, people that she'll want to be with and come back and reunite with later that aren't in 19. All right, the next question. Please give examples of the kinds of social challenges that diverse first-year Bruins in particular tend to experience, and how the FYE staff has helped address them.
Okay, I'm wondering if implicit in that question is, are we, by diverse, are we referring specifically about students of color? If so, I can answer that, because one thing that's also true is that all of our students are diverse. But if we're talking specifically about students of color, then, and again, I think the tricky part is we don't want to make assumptions about a student's background, So you may have, like I said, I'll use, let's say a Filipino student, for example. We have many Filipino students who went to high school in primarily Asian American communities. And then you'll have some where they were the only Asian American in their background. I think one thing most of our students can count on is some version of culture shock, by which I mean you are experiencing something new for the first time, and you may have a temporary setback based on that. It could be that that a student may feel like they can't be an individual, that they're representing an entire community when they're in class, or they may feel, and therefore it could be this whole domino effect, like, oh, I'm the only Black girl in my class, but I'm struggling. I can't let people know that I'm struggling, because then that says something about all Black people. And that's not specific to UCLA. That's a common feeling that students may experience at any institution of higher education. So, I mean, that's an example, like culture shock and feeling the sort of, concerns that one can't just be in its, an individual. But we also have to be careful about framing that experience only in negative terms, like, oh, you're going to struggle, you're going to be an outsider, you're going to be marginalized. There are tremendous opportunities for students to bond, to build community with those who look like them, and build communities with folks who don't look like them. And that is how one becomes a global citizen, to recognize difference and also to connect with others. And I do want to stress that how important while yes, we also want to connect with those who are not like us, but we sometimes underestimate the value of connecting with folks who do have similar backgrounds as us too. One of the communities that first year experience in particular is focusing on our first generation college students, like Patricia mentioned. By that we mean students whose parents have not received a degree, and I'll actually have a more broader definition: students whose parents have not completed a degree in the United States, because the whole purpose is to again, build a community among for students whose parents may not have been able to assist them in the college application process. So we have created a program called First to Go. And one of the beauties of that program is that it does cut across racial and ethnic lines. Many students from different diverse ethnicities do identify as first generation college. We had the first ever first gen welcome, and it has brought back our alumni, our faculty and staff who also identify as first gen, want to be involved, want to mentor those students. And we're going to see more opportunities that extend beyond the first year experience program. You know, while we may be taking the lead to some degree, it's a true campus-wide effort.
When I think about examples of what students may go through, it is, I think, sort of a overwhelming question to think about, because there are so many instances. I think I'm going to fare a little bit on the negative side, because I know those are some worries parents may have, and heaven forbid, like this, it doesn't happen, but these things do happen, right? Because, you know, UCLA is not just a bubble. You know, we are affected by society and what's going on right now. You know, in terms of, you know, sentiments around, you know, who deserves what, and those things carry out, you know, and sometimes it can carry out in ways that are not positive on campus. So some common things that, you know, I've heard, and we definitely have resources that support students, is thinking about bias in the classroom, right? Being put in a class, and then all of a sudden, you know, there may be a question around or there's a learning unit around slavery, and then there's attention all of a sudden being directed towards an African-American student. You know, those are some real experiences that happen. And by the way, there's always ways for students to report those things, particularly through the Dean of Students. And there's online links that they can report those things, so we can better track and improve, you know, the behavior of our faculty or any staff member that might be exhibiting a source of bias. We know from a national conversation, sexual violence is something that is real, and it doesn't have to be this full-blown space where, you know, there's physical violence, but, you know, there are, you know, comments, because we're all learning and people have biases that do happen on campus that may make a student feel like they're not good enough, or they need to dress a certain way, or they feel attacked in terms of their body image. And where I worry the most is how much a student may internalize some of these messages that they're getting. Right, thinking that, you know, the college environment is a place where, you know, everyone is educated. You know, there's still mistakes that are going to be happening, right? So, you know, a simple one for me that sometimes happens is people assume if I speak English or not, right? Because and that sort of weighs on me. It's like, wow, I got into UCLA. I'd hope, you know, I think I'd get to. But those things do happen, and, you know, that's where the learning can happen. But also there are ways, if a student feels like it's so much, that they can get support around it. I will say social class is one that I see a lot of folks struggle with. You know, something as small as saying like, hey, what are you doing for spring break? And if you're a student that doesn't have that kind of money and actually has to, you know, save up money to give back home, that can be a jarring experience, and you feel a little bit of an outsider kind of space. I think another one too is thinking about how politically diverse our campus is. Some of the things that are being said are not what we grew up with, the values, and those can actually be somewhat traumatic. And so having resources like our counseling and psychological services, the Bruin Resource Center, people like LT can help our students really sort through those things. So those are some of the social experiences. What I worry the most is when those social experiences get so overbearing that a student refuses to get help. They think that they're the only one. And so that's why I think having peer advising is so important, and having staff that have a pulse on this stuff. But if I can ask parents to do one thing, it's really encouraging their student to encourage their student that it's okay to ask for help, and it's okay to find a staff person, at least one, that you can develop a relationship with, because they can advocate for you in a very different way than a peer can. And then lastly, as a parent too, you know, it's always, you know, you're always going to wonder if they're eating enough, sleeping enough, and they're studying enough. But some of the most important questions are, is like, you know, do you feel like you're belonging? You know, do you feel like you're making friends? What have you learned about yourself? You know, what's been something that you've learned about yourself that was so different from back home? Those are really good questions to ask to help them acclimate to this campus if they're actually struggling. And I think once they know that you're actually open to hearing about things, you'll maybe hear more that they actually are struggling with certain things. And then you can connect them with parent-family programs and LT to see how we can best support them.
Can I respond to some of that? It was fantastic. First, I have one thing. Now I have two, because you're so smart. So one about asking for help. I think it's important for parents to remember that your student has gotten where she or he is based on, you know, a skill set that encourage them to be a leader, to be, to be involved with things, et cetera, right? That's the UCLA way. And so to come to school and suddenly struggle and suddenly asking them to ask for help, that may not have been the skill set that got them here. And so now they have to develop other kinds of behaviors to get them through college. So they've developed wonderful skill sets to get here. Now they're gonna have to develop this whole other component to get them through. So it may take a little while, but like you said before, it's that trying things that don't work that actually where you can mark your growth, right? So that was point one. And then point two, going back to social class. I think oftentimes, because we are a public institution, we forget about the very real notion of social class. We think that those kinds of differences exist at private schools or that other school across the way, right? But there is just there's a variety. We cannot stress enough the variety of people who come here from different backgrounds and have access to different resources. And that can be and often is a very real form of culture shock, especially, let's say you're in the residence halls and you have roommates and you're seeing what they have or what they brought or who came with them for move-in. And then suddenly you're just experiencing something different. So I just want to point that out, that class differences are apparent on our campus as well.
And thinking about social challenges, the best way I think parents and families can equip themselves is getting to know the resources before bad things happen. So understanding that we do have confidential reporting around sexual assault, there's like someone here that can really talk to a student that's going through that experience, right? Thinking about, the resources that we have within the Dean of Students for students that are financially struggling. Food security may be something. And honestly, you hope this is not happening to your student, but we also are a community. So this may come to you in a form of, your student might be sharing something about their friend or their roommate, and you being able to offer that resource to your student to share with them is also a way that we can watch out for our students here. So I know we'll be happy to share, and to follow up some of the major resources that can come when it comes to those kind of things. I also say, for the LGBT community, we have a very vibrant one here, and we have so many resources, particularly in regards to, learning about this scholarly, but helping you through this process. We have a great, health program here that offers, resources in ways that I don't think you could get outside of a college campus, particularly when it comes to gender identity. And that one I know is always sometimes a hard one for parents. So I just want to name that one as a really good resource, because some of the challenges are, it might be coming out to you, maybe a really hard challenge that they may be dealing with. And so, just know that there's staff here that are willing to talk to you if you feel like you can't talk to their student. Our LGBT Center has confidential counseling within their center and career programming, and our alumni networks are always welcome to help out your student. But some of the challenges actually might be with you, right? So another one that's common is major choice. A lot of students are coming from first-gen backgrounds, sometimes immigrant backgrounds, maybe have been told to grow up to be a certain profession. And I'll just name some of them, like being a lawyer or a doctor. Then you see a million other things that you can do. And so, some of the questions I really tell parents to think about is like, what do you love learning? Instead of like, what are your grades, right? Or what classes seem to be speaking to you, particularly as they choose classes. And then also always putting that career sort of conversation in their head. I mean, they're young, but it's always good to explore. We change a career sometimes 5 times, in our lives. So having some flexibility and helping them understand what their life mission is going to be versus their career could be a really good way to resolve some of the issues I think we see amongst our diverse students.
You know, when we're at home and our kids get accepted, they get their acceptance letter, and we're packing them up and you know, getting ready to send them on their way. As parents, we're thinking about, you know, is my child going to get enough sleep? What do we do if, you know, they get a cold? What about, you know, the Arthur Ashe Center? I need to know these things. What about drinking? But these issues that you're talking about are so real. And I want to say, as a parent that's gone through 1 year, I feel very secure in the amount of resources that you're providing that I didn't know about. And it may be because I heard through Parents Council, because I was on Parents Council, all of these resources, but I don't think so. I think that it is really amazing, the resources that you guys have come up with to help students and to help them cope and thrive and to become global citizens, as you say. I just think it's a wonderful thing that you guys are doing. All right, next question. Do you have some sense of the success of your efforts to improve the yield rate of diverse students who have been offered admission to UCLA? How could parents of currently enrolled students help with this, if at all?
This is a really complex question. I really appreciate this, and I love that, you know, parents and family are thinking about these things, so that's always something that's on our mind. LT, I think I'll chime in a little bit. I'm pretty sure you have a lot more to say. But yes, it is a community effort to really think about, you know, how we increase the diversity at UCLA. And our alumni are actually very involved in that. For example, this Sunday, our Black Alumni Association is holding a workshop on admission, how to write admission essays and such. And so if anyone's ever interested, feel free to contact me and we can do that. Some of our biggest efforts are actually during the time they get their letter and they're making their decision, because there are a lot of misconceptions about UCLA in regards to supporting diverse students. And so our alumni are really out there trying to, you know, beat the drum for UCLA and saying, you know, these are the opportunities. A lot of it has to do with financial aid. So actually many of our diversity alumni groups spend a lot of time raising scholarship money to help recruit. Because I will say some of, particularly, you know, in our African-American community, if a student can get in here, they can get into Harvard. And UCLA is a public institution, and we just don't have that kind of endowment that can offer that kind of money like Harvard can. And so a really great way to help out is our scholarship funds that we're able to give to our diverse students. But if you're ever interested in helping us with letter writing campaigns, another big area is when we do bring students to campus after they got admitted, we have students and their parents come to do an open house, and we have them within diverse communities. Like our Black community does one, our Latino one does one. And so during those times, there are actually parent panels, because these are usually events organized by students, but parents do come with it. Last year for La Raza, for example, our Latino community, you know, out of the 500 that came, more than half were family. And so we're always looking for parents who are willing to share their experiences, because it's one of those things that gets scary. You know, you're about to have your child leave home, and you want to be sure that there's a community that can support them. So if any parents are open to sitting on panels during that time to talk about their experience, that would be so wonderful. And I will be sure to share our contact information so you can get involved in that way. LT?
I'll try. I want to give a historical answer, but I'll try to make it concise. So I'm back at UCLA, having been gone away, but in my initial time here, back in 2006, I believe it was, we had a freshman class that only had 96 Black freshmen in it, and they're known as the infamous 96. It was a low point for our campus in terms of a racially diverse class. And I worked and got to know many of those students. But what I really appreciated was not just there was a concern. It was concern nationally about this. It made national news. But the level of activism that was involved to make sure that did not ever happen again. So yes, like Patricia mentioned, alumni really mobilized. Our students mobilized, our faculty mobilized. I was honored to be a part of a one-unit course called the Black Student Experience at UCLA. And we offered it, myself and a colleague, two colleagues offered it every single quarter. And again, it was an opportunity for many of those students who felt isolated to see each other every quarter. And that course evolved into other kinds of courses, Muslim student experience on campus, the Black Male Institute, etc. But more importantly, it is that kind of mobilization, that concern from every sector on the campus influence enrollment management so that there's much more concerted effort on our yield. How do we get these students to come to UCLA? And we're all excited to have our most racially and ethnically diverse class ever in this current year's group. But that took so many folks being involved. It took from, like I said, our first year students through our alum to come together and say that is not reflective of the state of California. We are a public institution. So that is not the effort of any single individual at all. Yeah, so I'll leave it there.
And also, our parents and our families are some of our best recruiters for UCLA. I'll say that. You know, I think where I see some of these conversations can be super helpful is when a student feels like they can't get into UCLA. And sometimes they shut themselves off even before they apply. So always being an encouraging force in you know, your high school or your community to say, like, you know, there's always a possibility, and always connecting them to us, that is a possibility, you know. So encourage them to apply, because I know UCLA can be competitive and then everyone's like, no, why should I even bother? But that really does harm us, because we do want to be an accessible school. So please encourage them to apply as well.
And Patricia, actually, your mention of high school leads to our last question for the evening. A parent is asking, my student is a freshman and was involved in Student Diversity and Leadership Council at her high school. Are there student groups, clubs like this at UCLA?
LT, I don't even know where to start. There's a lot. There's different ways that you can get involved. We sort of divide them up in sort of different arenas. There's ones that our students are organizing certain initiatives, and that's really great, founded through what I would say are some quintessential diversity student organizations like African Student Union, Asian Pacific Coalition, Samahang Filipino. There's a core group of race-based and LGBT-based student groups that do those kind of things. Then you have sort of university sort of sponsored kind of initiatives. So things like intergroup dialogue, which is in the Bruin Resource Center, is a great opportunity, as well as thinking about doing even programming in the residence halls. They can bring diversity lens, things like that, into their residence halls. And then there are certain actually committees that students can potentially think about joining. For example, our new Vice Chancellor of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion has a student advisory board that works with senior level admin and thinking about improving campus climate. So it's really sort of where your student may be in regards of how they want to engage. Do they want to do sort of the fun, you know, fabric and festival kind of cultural experiences, or do they want to do some strong advocacy work? Do they want to work on recruitment? Do they want to help bring students here? There's quite a few, and I think LT and I are always happy to meet with the students to help them sort what that could look like for them. I will say there's no lack of choices on this campus.
The only thing I would add to that, because a great comprehensive answer is always, is the role that research can play in that too, with respect to diversity. We are a research institution. Our faculty are involved in identifying, like I said, new modes of thinking and et cetera. So I have found many students in their frustration with not feeling like this isn't a diverse campus. I've seen them channel that into creating research projects where they ask great questions about you know, anything ranging from first generation Latino students to transfer students to what are the support systems for LGBT youth. I've just seen a range of projects. So there's that form of channeling that they do. One of the benefits of that is that it does connect them to a faculty member as well. And then I've seen students take those research projects and translate them directly into graduate school projects as well.
That's great. Thank you so much. It just seems like anything that a student is doing in high school and they bring forward into their higher education, specifically at UCLA, it's, you know, there was a little seed planted, and UCLA gives them the opportunity to go as far with it, you know, to grow a tree or to plant a field and you know, grow acres. And I just think that's such wonderful opportunity, specifically, you know, even with research, because that has no limits to it with research. Thank you both so much. Unfortunately, we're out of time today for our webinar. I'd like to thank Patricia Chow-Wen and LT Reese-Miles for being with us today. Information about upcoming webinars will be made available soon via our social media outlets. So please follow up on Facebook by searching UCLA Parents, or on Twitter and Instagram with the name @UCLA_parents. We also encourage you to consider joining the Parent and Family Association volunteer group for the upcoming year. More information is available below. And as always, please feel free to contact the Office of Parent and Family Programs at mybruinis@ucla.edu or 310-794-6737. Thank you, and go Bruins.
Go Bruins.
Thank you, Jennifer. Thanks, Patricia.
Thank you.